The morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window, slicing thin lines across the table. Clara sat there, staring into her coffee, as if the dark liquid could hide the storm inside her. The house was too quiet, a sharp contrast to the usual chaos of clattering dishes, her mom humming, and Emily's laughter. But today it felt tense, almost fragile. Clara's mind kept replaying last night's confrontation. The words, the laughter, the betrayal, they haunted her. Emily had crossed a line that Clara thought could never be crossed. She had trusted her sister with something private, something sacred, and Emily had shattered that trust with careless cruelty. Clara felt raw, humiliated, exposed. She took a shaky sip of coffee, the bitter taste grounding her for a moment. Her dad's voice suddenly cut through the silence. "Clara, did you hear me?" She blinked, startled, and looked up. He set an envelope on the table, thick, official-looking, almost ceremonial. "We've booked a trip to Italy. Just the 6 of us. You are coming." Clara froze. Italy. A family trip. And she was included. For a moment, disbelief swept over her, almost numbing the rage that had been building inside. The betrayal, the humiliation, Emily's smug smile, everything was momentarily pushed aside. But then the weight of it all returned. How could her parents act like nothing had happened? How could Emily sit there, laughing, as if she hadn't done anything wrong? The anger sparked again, hotter this time, more dangerous. Clara realized that something dark had taken root in her chest, a quiet, simmering desire for revenge. Her gaze locked on Emily, who grinned across the table, completely unaware of the storm brewing. Clara didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said enough. A plan, half-formed and dangerous, began to take shape in her mind. Revenge wasn't just about exposing Emily. It was about making her understand the weight of her betrayal, the sting of broken trust. The thought made Clara's heart race. Parents chatted happily, completely oblivious. Her mum poured orange juice with her usual calm efficiency. Her dad hummed a tune under his breath. Everything looked normal. Everything looked peaceful. And that peace made Clara's anger sharper. How could they enjoy this perfect morning when Emily had destroyed the trust between sisters so carelessly? How could they be blind to what had happened? Clara forced herself to breathe. The anger inside her was a living thing now, coiling, twisting, demanding action. But she knew she couldn't act rashly. Revenge required patience, strategy. Every movement, every word, every choice needed to be calculated. She had to observe, plan, and wait for the right moment. The thought of striking impulsively terrified her almost as much as it excited her. She realized that this was a turning point. She would either let this betrayal define her, consume her, or she would take control and channel it. As her dad continued, talking about Italy, showing maps and pointing out beaches, Clara's mind was elsewhere. Italy wasn't just a vacation. It was a stage. A place where she could see her sister clearly, watch her reactions, plan carefully. Every joke Emily made, every laugh she shared with their parents, was ammunition. Clara imagined subtle ways to turn situations around, to make Emily feel the discomfort, the guilt, the embarrassment she had felt. She imagined quiet confrontations, moments of revelation, small acts that would be noticed only by those who mattered. The thought made her pulse quicken. Clara's hand brushed the envelope. She hadn't opened it yet. Tickets, itineraries, hotel, reservations, everything was there. A symbol of a happy family experience that now felt tainted. A reminder that life went on even when trust was broken. The weight of the envelope in her hands felt heavy, not because of paper, but because of what it represented. Everything about this morning, the perfect light, the calm kitchen, the cheerful family conversation, was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. She glanced at Emily again. Her sister tilted her head, hair falling perfectly over one shoulder, eyes glinting with mischief. Clara's stomach tightened. Every small movement, every innocent smile, every laugh was a spark to the fire inside her. Clara imagined the perfect moments to act, to reveal, to retaliate, but she swallowed the thought. Not yet. Timing was everything. Revenge demanded patience, and Clara had learned that impulsive actions rarely satisfied the hunger for justice. The breakfast continued. Pancakes, eggs, toast, they were all there, but Clara barely tasted them. She moved through the motions mechanically, nodding at her parents, exchanging small words, all while keeping her mind sharp, calculating. She observed every gesture of Emily's, every glance, every laugh. Each one was a puzzle piece she could use later, a key to understanding her sister's strengths and weaknesses. Clara realized that to succeed, she would need to be clever, deliberate, and patient. Even as she planned, she felt another emotion creeping in. Fear. She had never wanted to become someone who plotted harm, even subtle harm, to others. But the betrayal had changed something inside her. It awakened a part of her that was willing to go further than she ever thought possible. She felt the thrill of imagining the perfect revenge, and yet she feared what it would do to her, what it might turn her into. But she knew she couldn't go back. This moment had defined a new path for her. Her dad's voice broke through her thoughts again. Breakfast is over. Let's start getting ready. Clara nodded, forcing another smile. She cleared her plate, moving with purpose, pretending that everything was normal. But it wasn't. She felt the fire inside her, steady and growing. Italy was coming, and with it, an opportunity. A chance to test her patience, her intelligence, her ability to control the storm that Emily had unleashed. Clara glanced one last time at her sister, who was leaning on their dad's shoulder, laughing freely. The contrast was almost unbearable. Clara's jaw tightened. The desire for revenge was no longer a thought, it was a steady, controlled burn. She would not act recklessly. She would wait. She would plan. And when the right moment came, she would make Emily understand that betrayal had consequences, and that the quiet ones often carry the sharpest edge. As she left the kitchen, Clara felt a strange clarity. Betrayal had ignited something inside her, but so had restraint. Italy, the family trip meant to unite them, had become the perfect stage. And Clara knew one thing with certainty. She was ready for whatever came next. The betrayal had set the stage, and Clara was ready. Clara couldn't sleep that night. Her room was dark, but her mind was alive with movement, each thought racing faster than the last. Italy was just days away, and the anticipation gnawed at her like a persistent ache. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of Emily's betrayal. The secret she had trusted to her sister's care had been exposed, twisted, laughed at, and shared. The humiliation was still fresh, still raw, and now it mingled with a darker, sharper emotion-revenge. She sat up, pulling her journal from the nightstand. The pages were blank, but soon they were filled with notes, plans, and possibilities. Every scenario, every reaction, every subtle way to expose Emily, she wrote it down. It was a puzzle, a strategy game, and Clara was determined to win. She imagined moments where Emily would falter, gestures that could hint at guilt, and small, careful acts that would make her sister uneasy without anyone else noticing. The thrill of the planning made her pulse race, but she knew she had to remain controlled. Any misstep could ruin everything. Clara's thoughts weren't limited to just Emily. She thought about her parents, their trust, their innocence in all this. She loved them, and she didn't want to hurt them unnecessarily. The idea of revenge was intoxicating, but she knew it had to be precise, subtle, and almost invisible. Otherwise, she risked becoming the person she despised, a girl who sought satisfaction in pain. That idea made her pause, hand hovering over the page, thinking about morality, about control, about consequences. Days passed in a blur of preparation. Packing for the trip became a ritual. Each item she placed in her suitcase, reminded that the journey ahead wasn't just about beaches and cobblestone streets. It was about timing, observation, and control. Every glance she exchanged with Emily was scrutinized, every word overheard analyzed for hidden meanings or subtle arrogance. Clara noticed the small things. How Emily laughed a little too loudly when she felt guilty, the way she avoided her gaze when Clara's eyes met hers, the tiny smirks she tried to hide. Each detail was fuel for Clara's internal engine. Her mind became a constant calculation. At night, she imagined different confrontations, scenarios where Emily would finally feel the weight of betrayal. She considered pointing out the secret, publicly, whispering hints at the right moments, and using the environment, the trip, the family, the crowds to her advantage. It wasn't about cruelty, not yet. It was about justice, a psychological balance she wanted to restore in her own mind. Every time the thought surfaced, her heart raced, adrenaline mixed with fear, but also satisfaction. Clara's emotions became a battlefield. Anger, shame, excitement, guilt, they all collided, each wave stronger than the last. She questioned herself constantly. Was this the right way to handle the betrayal? Was it fair to even consider revenge? And yet she couldn't stop thinking about Emily's laughter, the way it had sliced through her trust like a knife. Every smile, every careless gesture demanded attention, demanded retaliation. Clara realized that this internal struggle was consuming her. Sleep became fragmented, meals felt mechanical, and conversations with her parents were carefully measured to hide the storm within. Even as she watched her parents and Emily prepare for the trip, Clara felt the weight of duality pressing down on her. On one side was the burning desire for revenge, sharp and consuming. On the other was her conscience, a quiet but persistent voice warning her that every action had consequences. She knew that if she acted too soon or too openly, the trip, the family, even her own sense of self could crumble. Revenge required patience, precision, and timing. She had to be deliberate. She had to be clever. She had to wait. Clara spent hours observing Emily, analyzing her reactions to every situation. A joke her dad made, a teasing comment, a casual glance. Clara catalogued them all. She imagined the perfect moments when Emily's facade might crack. Moments when guilt, embarrassment, or self-doubt could surface. Each observation added another layer to her plan. It was meticulous, strategic, almost like a game of chess. Clara realized she was learning more about her sister than she ever had, understanding the ways Emily thought she could manipulate situations, and anticipating her next moves. The excitement of the upcoming trip was intertwined with a quiet dread. Clara knew that once in Italy, the enclosed space and constant family interaction would force confrontations sooner or later. The thought of the narrow streets, the crowded cafes, and the shared hotel rooms gave her both opportunity and anxiety. Every step of the trip could be a chance to act, but also a risk that things could spiral out of control. She reminded herself constantly: patience, observation, control. Every impulsive action would destroy the advantage she had painstakingly built in her mind. Clara's internal conflict grew stronger as the days passed. She considered forgiveness, the possibility of walking away, letting the betrayal fade into memory. But each time she tried, Emily's smug face returned. A silent challenge, a reminder that injustice could not go unacknowledged. Clara understood that revenge, in some form, had become part of her identity. She was no longer just the sister who had been hurt. She was a strategist, a planner, someone who sought balance in a world that had betrayed her. Sleep came rarely, and when it did, it was restless and full of vivid dreams. Clara imagined confrontations that never happened, victories that felt hollow, and moments of exposure that made her heart race in ways she couldn't explain. Every scenario taught her something new about herself, about Emily, about the thin line between satisfaction and destruction. She realized that revenge was a powerful emotion, but one that demanded careful handling, like fire. Too much and it consumed everything. Too little, and the justice she craved would never be felt. By the time the day of departure arrived, Clara's mind was a fortress of plans. She had mapped out every interaction, memorized small details, and mentally rehearsed countless outcomes. The trip to Italy was no longer just a vacation. It was a stage, a chessboard, a controlled environment where every move mattered. Clara knew she had to stay patient, to observe, to wait for the perfect moment. The tension inside her had grown into a quiet, steady fire, one that would not be extinguished by time or distance. As she boarded the plane, her heart pounded with anticipation. She took her seat, glanced at Emily laughing with their parents, and felt the familiar twist of anger and determination. The desire for revenge was there, sharp and clear, but so was a new sense of control. Clara realized that the true power lay not in acting impulsively, but in waiting, in watching, in understanding the people around her, and using that knowledge. Wisely. The engines roared, the plane lifted off, and Clara's eyes fixed on the horizon. Italy awaited, with its narrow streets, its bustling cafes, and its golden sunsets. But for Clara, it wasn't just a destination. It was the arena where her patience, intelligence, and careful planning would be tested. Every detail mattered, every glance counted, and every word spoken could tip the balance. She felt alive, focused, and terrifyingly aware of the potential power she now held. The plane sliced through the clouds, carrying her closer to the stage she had imagined so many nights. Clara leaned back in her seat, closed her journal, and let her thoughts wander over the plans she had built, the observations she had made, and the moments that would soon come. The fire inside her burned steadily now, no longer wild and uncontrolled, but disciplined, precise, and purposeful. Revenge was coming, but it would come on her terms. And for the first time, Clara understood something crucial. The true struggle wasn't in acting, it was in the waiting, in the patience, and in mastering the tension that grew stronger with each passing hour. Italy was more than a trip. It was the crucible where desire, anger, and intelligence would collide, and Clara was ready to navigate it, step by careful step. The sun had just begun to rise over the Italian coastline when Clara stepped onto the balcony of their hotel room. The sky glowed in shades of orange and gold, the waves below sparkling like scattered diamonds. Everything felt surreal, beautiful, peaceful, ordinary. And yet, beneath that calm surface, Clara's mind buzzed with tension. Italy was here, the trip had begun, and with it, the opportunity she had waited for. Every detail, every observation, every careful plan she had made. Over weeks now led to this moment. Emily was inside the room, unpacking her clothes, humming a tune she thought no one could hear. Clara watched her sister's movements, noting the familiar habits, the subtle gestures that hinted at pride, arrogance, and a sense of invulnerability. All those little signs she had catalogued in her journal were alive before her eyes. The contrast between the idyllic scenery and the storm inside her chest was almost unbearable. She could feel her pulse in her throat, a steady drumbeat that echoed her anticipation and fear. Clara moved deliberately, pretending to admire the view, while reviewing the mental checklist she had crafted. Timing, subtlety, precision, everything had to be perfect. Her mind raced with the scenarios she had rehearsed countless times. A whispered comment at the dinner table, a casual remark during a walk through the city, a hint dropped to their parents at the right moment. Each was calculated to unnerve Emily, to make her feel the sting of her actions, to restore the balance Clara believed had been broken. But as the day wore on, Clara felt something unexpected creeping in. She watched Emily laugh with their parents, carefree, unguarded, oblivious to the intricate web of plans Clara had spun. Each smile, each gesture of innocence, tugged at a corner of her conscience. Revenge had been her focus for weeks, a fire that burned bright in her mind. But now, faced with the real person she had plotted against, she saw more than arrogance or cruelty. She saw a sister vulnerable in ways she had never allowed herself to see before. The thought unsettled her. Could she go through with it? Could she destroy this fragile moment of happiness, just to satisfy her desire for payback? Clara spent the afternoon navigating the city streets, pretending to enjoy the trip, observing Emily with precision. She noted every laugh, every glance, every small movement, cataloguing them in her mind. But with each observation came the realization that revenge wasn't as simple or satisfying as she had imagined. The fantasy she had held for weeks, the perfect exposure, the small acts of humiliation began to feel hollow. It was still possible. She still had the chance. But the emotional weight of the decision pressed down on her chest, heavy and unyielding. During dinner that evening, the family gathered at a small restaurant overlooking the harbor. Candles flickered on the table, casting shadows on the faces of her parents, Emily, and the others. Clara's mind wandered to the possibilities, imagining the perfect way to expose Emily's betrayal. Every detail mattered. The timing of words, the reactions of her parents, the subtle shifts in Emily's expressions. Her journal had been left in the hotel room, but its contents lived in her head, guiding every thought and every move. Clara realized that the moment of decision was imminent. She could execute her plan with precision, or she could walk away. Both options carried weight. Both had consequences. The fire that had driven her planning was still there, but so was a new awareness of morality, of empathy, of the fragile connections that bound them as a family. She understood that revenge, even carefully crafted, could fracture everything she valued, leave her with fleeting satisfaction and an enduring emptiness. She glanced at Emily. Her sister laughed at her joke their father made, leaning forward, her hands animated, eyes sparkling with joy. Clara's pulse quickened. The contrast between Emily's carefree demeanor and the simmering storm inside Clara's chest was striking. She felt the thrill of control, the temptation to act, and yet a deep hesitation took root. She realized that executing the plan would change everything, possibly forever. She would feel a rush of satisfaction. Yes, but would it be worth the cost? The night deepened and the restaurant emptied, leaving only their family and the quiet sounds of the harbor. Clara leaned back in, her chair, breathing slowly, weighing every thought. Revenge had been her driving force, but now she questioned its value. The meticulous planning, the anticipation, the mental rehearsals all had led to a single moment, a choice. And for the first time, she realized that power didn't always lie in action. Sometimes it lay in restraint, in choosing not to inflict harm, in walking away from the fire that threatened to consume her. On the way back to the hotel, Clara kept a careful distance from Emily, her mind racing. She considered the possibilities once more: subtle jabs, whispered comments, hints dropped at the perfect moment. She could do it. She had the opportunity, the environment, the knowledge and the timing. And yet, each possibility seemed increasingly hollow, increasingly destructive. The thought of seeing her parents' faces, of watching the joy in their eyes fade because of a calculated act of revenge, was unbearable. By the time they reached their hotel room, Clara felt a shift within herself. The desire for retribution, which had been a roaring fire for weeks, had transformed into something quieter, controlled, deliberate. It was no longer about punishment. It was about understanding, about choice, about realizing that she didn't have to let betrayal dictate her actions or her happiness. She could choose restraint and, in doing so, reclaim a sense of power she had not understood before. Clara sat on the balcony once more, looking out over the city lights reflected in the water below. Emily's laughter drifted from inside, soft, carefree, innocent. Clara's chest loosened. She realized that she could have acted, that she could have executed her plan flawlessly, but she had chosen otherwise. The tension that had gripped her for weeks began to ease, replaced by a quiet sense of control and understanding. Revenge had been tempting, but walking away, observing, and choosing not to act carried its own satisfaction, one deeper, longer lasting, and infinitely more powerful. The next morning, Clara awoke early, the sunlight streaming over the rooftops. Italy was alive with possibility, full of streets to explore, cafes to wander, and experiences to savor. She watched Emily packing for the day, unaware of the internal struggle that had consumed her sister. Clara realized something profound. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is not in action but in living well, in thriving despite betrayal, in refusing to let someone else's actions control your happiness. As the family stepped out into the streets of Italy, Clara felt a sense of liberation she had not known before. The betrayal was still there, sharp and painful, but it no longer dictated her thoughts or her choices. She understood that revenge, while alluring, was fleeting, while the power of choice, of restraint, of self-control, was enduring. She walked beside Emily, smiling genuinely, feeling a lightness that had been absent for weeks. The trip stretched before them, full of adventure, beauty, and the unexpected possibility of healing. For the first time since the betrayal, Clara felt truly free. Italy was not just a backdrop for revenge, it was the stage where she had discovered her own strength, her own ability to control the storm within her. And as the city stretched ahead, bustling with life and possibility, Clara understood that the real victory was not in punishing Emily, but in choosing herself, her peace, and her future. She realized that revenge could never truly satisfy, but growth, understanding, and restraint could. And in that knowledge, she found a calm, enduring power, one that no betrayal, no act of cruelty, could ever take from her. Italy was beautiful, the family together, and Clara's mind, for the first time in weeks, was at peace.